A single mother thought he was just an intern, but he was the millionaire owner of the building. A misunderstanding in the elevator turned into a romance that would change their lives forever. A love story filled with revelations that will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment where you're watching from. The March heat in downtown was relentless that Monday morning. Emily Johnson adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder, feeling the weight of responsibilities as she observed the 5 cardboard boxes stacked at the entrance of Maple Heights. In the heart of the city, sweat was already beginning to bead on her forehead, and she hadn't even started carrying her things to the 12th floor. "Mum, are you sure we can do this?" The voice of Lily, her 8-year-old daughter, carried that typical mix of childhood curiosity and premature worry that always tugged at Emily's heart. The girl clutched her favorite doll to her chest, watching the streets hustle and bustle with brown eyes identical to her mother's. Emily forced a confident smile, the one she had perfected over the last 3 years of single motherhood. "Of course, my love. We're an unbeatable duo, remember?" Her voice came out strong, but inside anxiety gnawed at her like a hungry animal. Their previous apartment had become too small, and the cheapest rent she could find was in this older building, without a 24-hour doorman, and with an elevator that, according to the real estate agent, sometimes threw tantrums. The lobby of the building exuded the characteristic aroma of fresh coffee mixed with the scent of wood polish from the antique furniture. The marble walls, although worn by time, still retained a certain elegance from the 1980s. Emily took a deep breath, adjusted, her brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and headed to the service elevator. She pressed the button harder than necessary. Nothing. She tried again. The panel remained dark, as if mocking her situation. "It can't be," she murmured, feeling the weight of frustration accumulate on her already tense shoulders from the poorly slept night at the neighbor's house that had temporarily taken them in. "Excuse me, is something wrong?" A deep male voice sounded behind her, filled with genuine concern. Emily turned around to find a man in his 40s, wearing a plain white t-shirt and faded jeans. His dark hair was slightly tousled, as if he had just woken up, and his hazel eyes showed a kindness she hadn't expected to find in downtown at 7 in the morning on a Monday. "The elevator is broken," she replied, trying to keep irritation out of her voice. "I need to get these boxes to the 12th floor," and her sentence trailed off as she realized how desperate the situation sounded. 12th. He whistled softly, glancing at the boxes and then back at her with a thoughtful expression. "That's a lot to carry up the stairs. Are you moving today?" Lily shyly hid behind her mother's leg, peeking at the stranger with curiosity. Emily instinctively pulled her daughter closer, her protective instinct always on high alert. "Yes, and I need to be at work in 2 hours, Emily explained, mentally calculating if she could make all the necessary trips on foot. The math didn't add up. "Do you work here in the building?" "Sort of," he replied with an enigmatic smile that made her eyes narrow slightly. Her experiences with men had taught her to be wary of vague answers. "I'm here to fix an issue with the electrical system. In fact, that's why the elevator isn't working." Emily nodded, making sense of the situation. He was probably the new building management intern, one of those who did a bit of everything and earned a pittance for it. She was well aware of this reality. "Let me help you with those boxes," he offered, already bending down to grab one before waiting for a response. "No, you don't have to." Emily began to protest, but he had already lifted the heaviest box with a surprising ease. "You don't have to do this. You must have your own responsibilities." "My responsibility right now is to solve the building's issues," he said with a warm smile that stirred something in her chest, a feeling she quickly suppressed. "And a resident needing help is definitely a problem I can solve. Lily whispered in her mother's ear, "Mom, he seems nice and he's strong." Emily felt her cheeks warm. "Lily, don't be rude," she gently reprimanded, but noticed how the man smiled at the girl's comment. "She's right, I am strong," he said, winking at Lily, who giggled softly. "What's your name, young lady?" "Lily Johnson," the girl replied with the typical ease of her age. "And this is my mom, Emily. We're an unbeatable duo." "Unbeatable duo, huh?" He looked at Emily with renewed interest. "It's a pleasure to meet you both. He paused almost imperceptibly. David Smith." Emily studied his face for a moment, trying to decipher if there was anything odd about the introduction, but the mental exhaustion of the past few days was impairing her analytical skills. Besides, Lily was already chatting animatedly with him about the doll she was carrying. "Thank you so much, David," she finally said, giving in to the offered help. "But it's 12 floors. That's a lot for you to carry." "I've carried much heavier things in my life," he replied with a determination that made her question what kind of work he really did. His hands looked calloused, but in a different way than the manual laborers she knew. As they began to ascend the first set of stairs, David kept a light conversation with Lily, asking about the doll and making the girl laugh with funny imitations of the sounds of cars on the street. Emily watched the interaction with a mix of gratitude and caution. On one hand, it was comforting to see Lily, relaxed and happy after days of tension. On the other hand, her experience had taught her that men who showed excessive interest in children did not always have the best intentions. "Where does Lily study?" David asked when they reached the 5th floor, stopping to rest a bit. "At the neighborhood public school," Emily replied, wiping the sweat from her forehead. "It's a good school, and it's close to my job." "And where do you work?" The question seemed innocent, but Emily felt her internal radar go off. Too much personal information for someone she had just met. "At a clinic," she answered vaguely, observing his reaction. "And you? How long have you been working in building maintenance?" "A few years," David replied, also being evasive. "It's an interesting job. Every day is different." Emily slightly furrowed her brow. There was something about the way he spoke that didn't fit the profile she had mentally constructed. His diction was too refined, his clothes, although simple, seemed to be of good quality, and there was a natural confidence in his gestures that usually came from experience in leadership positions. "Mom, can I have some water?" Lily interrupted her thoughts, and Emily realized she had been so absorbed in her suspicions that she had forgotten to offer water to her daughter. "Of course, sweetheart." She opened one of the boxes and took out a small bottle. "Do you want some too, David?" "Thank you, I'll have some." He took a few sips and handed the bottle back. "Shall we continue? We still have 7 floors to go." As they ascended, Emily couldn't stop observing how David moved with familiarity through the building. He knew every detail of the hallways, greeted the few residents they passed as if he had known them for years, and seemed to know exactly where each apartment was, without needing to check the numbers on the doors. "Have you lived here long?" she asked when they reached the 10th floor. "You could say that," he replied, once again with that enigmatic tone that was beginning to genuinely irritate her. When they finally reached the 12th floor, Emily was exhausted, but David seemed only slightly out of breath. She opened the door to apartment 1204, a simple but clean 2-bedroom unit with a partial view of the city. "This is it," she said, feeling a twinge of embarrassment at the modesty of the place. "Thank you so much for all your help. I don't know how I would have managed alone." David placed the last box on the floor and looked around with approval. "It's a good apartment. You will be happy here." There was something in the way he said that which sounded almost like a promise, and Emily found herself looking at him with an intensity that surprised her. When their eyes met, for a moment the world seemed to stop. There was a connection there, something she hadn't felt in a long time, and it frightened her deeply. "Well," she said, breaking the moment and returning to practical reality, "I need to get ready for work. Thanks again, David." "You're welcome. If you need anything, I'll be around." He headed for the door, but stopped and turned back. "Emily, welcome to the building." After he left, Lily ran to the window. "Mom, look! He's crossing the street!" Emily joined her daughter at the window and watched David walking calmly down Maple Street, his hands in his pockets, in no hurry at all. For someone who was supposedly there to work, he seemed very comfortable just leaving in the middle of the morning. "Mom, did you like him?" Lily asked, with the disconcerting insight of children. Emily felt her heart race slightly, but kept her voice neutral. "He was very kind to help us." As she began to unpack her things, Emily couldn't stop thinking about the strange encounter. There was something about David that didn't fit, but she couldn't quite put her finger on what exactly. One thing was certain: he had just made her first day in the new apartment much more interesting than she had expected. And that, she thought as she put away Lily's clothes in the small closet, could be both a blessing and a problem. The following 2 weeks established a curious routine in Emily's life. Every morning, as she left for work at the Vita Health Clinic, located just 3 blocks from the building, she inevitably bumped into David in the lobby. He was always there around 7:30, holding a cup of coffee and greeting the residents passing by with a familiarity that continued to intrigue her. "Good morning, Emily. Lily." His voice echoed through the marble hall on that March Thursday, carrying the same warm tone that had become part of her morning routine. "Hi, Uncle David." Lily ran ahead, her pink backpack swinging as she approached the man who had quickly become her favorite person in the building. "Today is gym class at school." Emily watched the interaction with mixed feelings. On one hand, it was comforting to see Lily so at ease and happy. The girl had gone through tough times during her parents' tumultuous separation, and seeing her genuine smile warmed Emily's heart. On the other hand, the ease with which David had won her daughter's trust left her slightly alarmed. "Gym class is the best." David crouched down to be at Lily's level, pretending to flex his muscles. "I bet you're super fast at running." "I am. Mom says I take after her because she was also good at sports in school." Lily looked at her mother with evident pride. David looked up at Emily, and she felt that familiar blush rising to her cheeks. "An athlete, huh? What sport?" "Volleyball," Emily replied, nervously adjusting her bag. "But that was a long time ago. Now I barely have time to walk in the park. Central Park is really close from here," he casually commented. "Great for walks on Sundays." There was something in the way he said that which sounded almost like an invitation, but before Emily could analyze it further, Mrs. Thompson, a resident from the 8th floor, appeared carrying 2 bags, heavy grocery bags. "David, my son, can you help me?" The elderly lady smiled at him with a maternal familiarity. "These bags are getting heavier every day, and my arthritis doesn't forgive." "Of course, Mrs. Thompson." He immediately approached the lady, effortlessly grabbing the bags. "You shouldn't carry weight like that. Next time, just call me and I'll pick up your groceries." Emily watched the exchange with growing confusion. What kind of maintenance intern had this level of intimacy with the residents? And more importantly, how did he have Mrs. Thompson's phone number? "You're an angel, dear," Mrs. Thompson said, affectionately squeezing his arm. "Your mother must be very proud of you." A shadow passed quickly over David's face, so subtle that Emily almost missed it. "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson." As he went up with the lady in the elevator, which, interestingly, had been functioning perfectly for several days, Emily remained in the lobby, deep in thought. Lily tugged at her hand, bringing her back to reality. "Mum, we're going to be late for school." Vita Health Clinic occupied the ground floor of a modern commercial building on Maple Street. Emily loved her job there, especially because Dr. Henry, the owner, was an understanding boss who recognized her responsibilities as a single mother. That morning, she was attending to Mrs. Johnson, a diabetic patient who always arrived with lively stories about her family. "Emily, dear, you seem different today," the 60-year-old lady observed, adjusting her glasses as she examined the personalized menu. "More radiant. Have you met someone?" Emily nearly choked on the coffee she was drinking. "Mrs. Johnson, you are very observant." "I didn't reach 65 without learning to read people," she laughed. "Come on, tell me everything. Is he a handsome man?" "It's nothing like that," Emily protested, but she realized she was involuntarily smiling. "It's just a neighbor who has been kind to me and Lily." "A kind neighbor with a beautiful single mother." Mrs. Johnson raised her eyebrows. "Dear, either he's gay, married, or interested, and considering your smile, I'm betting on the third option." Emily sighed, organizing the papers on the table, to distract herself. "It's complicated, Mrs. Johnson. I can't afford to complicate things emotionally right now. Lily and I are finally in a good place." "My daughter, life doesn't stop while you get organized," the lady said with the wisdom of someone who has lived a lot. Sometimes the best things come when we least expect them. When Emily got home that afternoon, she found Lily at the building's playground with David. He was pushing the swing while the girl laughed loudly, her hair flying in the warm March breeze. The scene was so natural, so familiar, that Emily felt something tighten in her chest. "Mom, look how Uncle David pushes hard." Lily waved excitedly. "Lily, don't bother David," Emily said, approaching the two. "He must have more important things to do." "Actually, I don't," David replied, slowing down the swing. "I finished work early today." Emily noticed he was wearing a light blue dress shirt under a simple sweater. Again, the clothes seemed of good quality for someone at the beginning of a career in building maintenance. "David, where did you study?" The question slipped out before she could hold it back. He hesitated for a fraction of a second. "Harvard. Engineering." "Engineering?" Emily couldn't hide her surprise. "And you work in maintenance?" "It's complicated," he replied, using the same word she had used with Mrs. Johnson earlier. "Sometimes life doesn't go as planned." Lily jumped off the swing and ran to hug her mother. "Mom, Uncle David taught me how to make a paper airplane. Look." She showed a perfectly folded paper airplane, much more elaborate than anything Emily could make. "Very nice, sweetheart," Emily said, but her eyes remained on David. "Where did you learn to do that?" "My dad taught me when I was little," he replied, a subtle melancholy coloring his voice. "He said a good paper airplane design teaches principles of aerodynamics." "Is your dad also an engineer?" David fell silent for a moment, watching Lily play with the airplane. "He was. He passed away a few years ago." Emily felt a pang of guilt for pressing on an obviously painful subject. "I'm sorry, I didn't know." "It's okay," he gently interrupted her. "It happens." At that moment, David's phone rang with classical music that Emily couldn't identify. He looked at the screen and frowned. "Excuse me, I need to take this." He stepped away a few paces, but Emily could still hear fragments of the conversation. "Yes, I know about the meeting. No, I need to resolve this in person. Tomorrow at 10 is fine." When he returned, his expression was slightly tense. "Is everything okay?" Emily asked. "Work," he replied, but she noticed he avoided her gaze. "Emily, do you like living here in the building?" The change of subject was abrupt, but she decided not to comment. "Yes, it's a good place. Safe for Lily. Close to work. Why do you ask?" "Just curiosity," he said, but there was something more in his expression. "Do you plan to stay here for a long time?" Emily studied his face, trying to decipher the intention behind the question. "It depends on many things. Why are you thinking of leaving?" "No," he answered quickly, perhaps too quickly. "Definitely not." Lily came running back to them, interrupting the tension that had settled. "Mom, can I invite Uncle David to dinner with us tonight?" Emily's heart raced. "Lily, you can't just invite people like that." "Actually," David gently interrupted, "I would love to, but I have some commitments tonight." He bent down to Lily. "But how about we get ice cream on Sunday, if your mom allows, of course?" Lily bounced with joy, and Emily found herself caught between her daughter's happiness and her own reservations. "We can talk about this later," she said diplomatically. As they headed up to the apartment, Lily couldn't stop talking about David. Emily was half listening, half thinking about the inconsistencies she was noticing. An engineer graduated from Harvard working in building maintenance, expensive clothes for someone at the start of their career, excessive familiarity with the residents, and now meetings that seemed more executive than operational. "Mom, did you like the idea of ice cream?" Lily asked while Emily was preparing dinner. "We'll see, sweetheart," Emily replied, chopping the vegetables with more force than necessary. That night, while Lily slept, Emily found herself at the living room window, watching the quiet street. Her savings were running low, her job at the clinic barely covered basic expenses, and she had lied to David about being satisfied with her situation. The truth was, she desperately needed an extra source of income, and the accounting books she studied every night were her only hope for a better future. Her dream of opening her own nutrition clinic seemed further away with every bill that arrived. But it was a dream she kept to herself, because admitting her ambitions meant admitting that her current life was not enough. Down below, she saw a familiar figure walking on the sidewalk. David, still dressed in the same clothes from the late afternoon, talking on the phone with gestures that seemed tense. He stopped under a streetlight and looked up, directly at her window. For a moment, their eyes met across the distance and the dim light. Emily felt her heart race, but she didn't step away from the window. There was something in his posture, in the way he looked at her, that made her feel as if he could see through all her carefully constructed defenses. David waved briefly and continued walking, disappearing around the corner. Emily stayed there for a few more minutes, wondering what was happening to her. 3 years ago, she had promised herself she would focus solely on being the best mother possible for Lily. Men were a complication she couldn't afford. So why couldn't she stop thinking about those hazel eyes and the smile that made her stomach flip like a teenager? Closing the window, Emily went to check on Lily, who was peacefully sleeping with her doll. Tomorrow would be another day, and she was sure she would see David again in the lobby. The question was whether it made her anxious or worried. Maybe both. April arrived with the typical autumn weather of New York, bringing with it cool mornings that called for a light jacket and still warm afternoons that invited walks in the city parks. Emily had established a comfortable routine in Maple Heights, but her interactions with David were beginning to awaken a curiosity she struggled to suppress. That Friday, as she headed down for work, she found David in the lobby, speaking fluent English with a couple of tourists who looked completely lost. She discreetly stopped near the mailbox, pretending to check for letters, but was actually paying attention to the conversation. "The best way to get to downtown's Main Street is taking the subway to Fifth Avenue and then walking for about 10 minutes, David explained with an impeccable accent, gesturing to indicate directions. "You'll find amazing restaurants and bars there. I particularly recommend Bahia Restaurant for authentic Brazilian food." Emily raised an eyebrow. His English was not just fluent, it was native. Perfect American accent, sophisticated vocabulary, total naturalness. What kind of maintenance worker spoke English like that? "Thank you so much. You're very kind," the American tourist replied, visibly relieved. "You're welcome. Enjoy New York." David said goodbye with a warm smile, only then noticing Emily nearby. "Good morning, lost tourists. You know how it is." "Your English is very good," Emily commented, trying to keep a casual tone as they walked together toward the exit. "Oh, you heard?" He seemed slightly uncomfortable. "I took some courses. It's useful in this job, you know. Foreigners always show up looking for information." The explanation sounded forced, and Emily decided to test her suspicions. "Where did you take those courses?" "I'm thinking about studying English too, to improve my job opportunities." At the English Culture Center, but it was a few years ago." David hesitated again, that almost imperceptible pause she was starting to recognize as a sign that he wasn't being completely honest. "Oh, it's expensive there, right?" Emily watched closely for his reaction. Well, I got a scholarship." Another pause. "Where are you going today?" The change of subject was too obvious, but Emily decided not to press, for now. At the clinic, during her lunch break, she couldn't concentrate on reading her accounting books as she usually did. Instead, she kept thinking about the inconsistencies in David's behavior. The conversation with Mrs. Johnson from a few weeks ago came back to her mind, but now with a different tone. "Dr. Smith," she said to her boss as he passed through the staff room, "can I ask you a somewhat strange question?" "Of course, Emily, what is it?" Dr. Smith was a 50-year-old man, bald and always good-humored, who treated all the staff like family. If someone wanted to pass themselves off as someone from a different social class, how would they do that? Dr. Smith raised his eyebrows, intrigued. "What an interesting question. Why? Are you thinking about writing a book?" Emily blushed. "It's just curiosity." "Well, I imagine it would be difficult to maintain such a lie for long," he reflected, sitting down at the table with his coffee. "Education, the way of speaking, personal tastes, all of that eventually leaks out at some point. Why the question? It's just that I met someone who seems to not fit the professional profile they present," Emily explained vaguely. "Ah, I see." Dr. Smith smiled mischievously. "It's a man, isn't it?" "Dr. Smith," Emily protested, but she was smiling. "Emily, you're a smart and observant woman. Trust your instincts. If something doesn't seem to fit, it probably doesn't." That afternoon, Emily decided to conduct a test. When she got home, she found Lily playing in the playground with David, as had become customary in recent days. She approached, deliberately carrying her accounting books in plain sight. "Studying a lot lately," David commented, noticing the books. "Accounting?" "Yes," Emily replied, carefully observing his reaction. "I'm taking a course. I dream of having my own business one day." David's eyes lit up with genuine interest. "What kind of business?" "A nutrition clinic." The words came out in a whisper, as if she were confessing a secret. And she was, in fact. She had never told anyone this. "Emily, that's fantastic." His excitement seemed completely sincere. "With your experience, it would be a guaranteed success." "It's just a dream," she quickly said, regretting revealing so much. "Kind of impossible, actually." "Why impossible?" David asked, his voice laden with an urgency that surprised her. "You know, startup capital, location, equipment, licenses." Emily listed the obstacles she had memorized from thinking about them so much. "It costs a lot of money to set something like this up." David fell silent for a moment, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "Have you made a business plan?" "Business plan?" Emily repeated, genuinely confused. It's a document that details all aspects of the business: target market, financial analysis, marketing strategies, profit projections. He stopped abruptly, as if realizing he was revealing knowledge that didn't fit with his declared professional profile. "Where did you learn about this?" Emily asked, her suspicions confirmed. In college," he replied, but avoided her eyes. "Some business courses are required in the engineering program." It was a plausible explanation, but Emily noticed he spoke with the fluency of someone who used these terms regularly, not someone who had studied them years ago. "Mom, Uncle David," Lily interrupted the tense moment by running up to them. "Can I tell you something? Today at school, the teacher asked what our parents do. I said my mom is a nutritionist and that my Uncle David takes care of the building." "Your Uncle David?" Emily looked at her daughter in surprise. "That's how I think of him," Lily explained with childlike simplicity. "He's nice to me, like an uncle would be." Emily noticed that David looked visibly touched by Lily's comment. There was a vulnerability in his eyes that she hadn't seen before. "Lily, do you want to show your mum the new trick you learned on the swing?" David suggested, clearly wanting to change the subject. As she watched Lily demonstrate her acrobatic skills, Emily decided to conduct another test. "David, do you know any accountants? I need help with my tax return." "I know a few," he replied casually. "I can recommend someone if you want." "Do you use an accountant too?" He hesitated. "For some things." More evasive. Emily was starting to get annoyed with his vague answers. "What kind of things? I thought employees didn't need an accountant." "I have some investments." The word came out with evident reluctance. Emily almost laughed. What kind of investments could a maintenance intern have? "Investments?" she repeated, unable to hide her skepticism. "Some small investments," David explained, clearly uncomfortable. "My dad taught me about the importance of saving money." "Your dad who was an engineer?" "Yes, he was." At that moment, David's phone rang again. This time, Emily paid attention to the music. It was a Mozart sonata. He looked at the screen, and his face tightened slightly. "Sorry, it's urgent," he said, stepping away to answer. Emily managed to hear fragments of the conversation, and this time she listened carefully. "I can't right now. I'm busy." "What meeting?" "Oh, yes, the board meeting." "Reschedule for Monday." "No, that can wait." "Board? What kind of board meeting would a maintenance employee have?" When David returned, Emily looked at him with new eyes. Now that she was paying attention, she noticed details she had ignored before. The upright and confident posture, the discreet but clearly expensive watch on his wrist, the professional haircut, the way other residents treated him with a deference that went beyond friendliness. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just work." He seemed worried. "Emily, I wanted to ask something. Are you enjoying living here? I mean, really enjoying it?" The question caught her off guard for the second time. "Why do you keep asking that? It's just, well, I know the rent here isn't the cheapest and—" He stopped as if realizing he was treading on dangerous ground. "How do you know how much I pay for rent?" Emily asked, her voice turning cold. "I don't know. I'm just assuming, based on the prices in the area." But Emily realized he had spoken like someone who knew exactly what the rent prices were in the building, as if it were his responsibility to know this information. "David," she said, deciding to be direct, "who are you really?" The silence that followed was heavy. Lily continued to play, oblivious to the tension that had settled between the adults. It's complicated, Emily." "Complicated how?" She crossed her arms, adopting a defensive posture. "I work here in the building, that's true, but not exactly in the way you think." "Then explain it the way it is." David looked at Lily, then at Emily, clearly torn between revealing the truth and maintaining his lie. "I take care of the owner's interests," he finally said. "What kind of interests? Maintenance, renovations, administrative issues?" Still evasive. But Emily felt she was getting closer to the truth. "And why didn't you say that from the beginning?" "Because," he sighed deeply, "because sometimes it's easier when people don't know exactly what your position is." It was the first honest answer she had gotten from him, and paradoxically, it made her even more suspicious. At that moment, Mrs. Thompson appeared at the window of the 8th floor. "David, can you come up here for a minute? The shower is making that strange noise again." "I'll be right there, Mrs. Thompson," he shouted back, then turned to Emily. "I need to go take care of this." "Sure," Emily said, but her voice was distant. "Emily, can we talk later? There are things I would like to explain." She watched him for a long moment, trying to decipher his intentions. "Maybe." As David headed to the elevator, Emily stayed in the playground with Lily, her mind buzzing with questions. Knowledge of business plans, fluent English, board meetings, investments, excessive familiarity with the building's administrative issues. "Mom, are you mad at Uncle David?" Lily asked, noticing her mother's tense expression. "I'm not mad, sweetheart, just thoughtful." "He's nice, right, Mom?" Emily looked at her daughter, seeing the evident adoration in her eyes. Lily was already getting attached to David, and that scared her. If he was lying about his identity, what else could he be lying about? "Yes, he seems nice," Emily replied cautiously, "but sometimes people aren't exactly what they seem." "What does that mean?" Emily sighed, pulling Lily closer. "It means we need to be careful about whom we trust, even when someone seems good." That night, while Lily slept, Emily found herself at the window again, watching the street. But this time, she wasn't thinking romantically about casual encounters. She was trying to figure out who the man was that had entered their lives. One thing was certain: she would uncover the truth about David Smith. For herself, and, most importantly, for Lily. The first step would be a discreet visit to the building management the next morning. April passed with Emily maintaining a polite but cautious distance from David. She had visited the building management and discovered that there was no David Smith registered as an employee, which only confirmed her suspicions. However, the secretary had vaguely mentioned that upper management sometimes sends people to resolve specific issues, leaving Emily even more confused. Lily, for her part, continued to ask about Uncle David every day, and Emily noticed that his absence was affecting her daughter's mood. It was a sunny Saturday in May when Emily finally decided she needed to resolve the situation. "Mum, can I go down to play in the playground?" Lily asked after lunch, looking out the window with evident hope of seeing David. "You can, but stay where I can see you from the window," Emily replied, watching her daughter run excitedly down the stairs. It didn't take long for Emily to see exactly what she expected from the window: Lily chatting animatedly with David near the swings. He was wearing a navy blue polo shirt and jeans, and Emily noticed that even his casual clothes seemed too expensive for someone in the position he claimed to have. Gathering her courage, she went down to confront him once and for all. "Lily, sweetheart, can you go wash your hands? It's snack time," Emily said as she approached the two. "Oh, Mom, I was telling Uncle David about the school fair." Emily had completely forgotten about the fair. Maple Elementary School was organizing an event the following Saturday, and she had promised to attend. "That's right, the school fair," Emily murmured, embarrassed for having forgotten something so important for her daughter. "Mom, Uncle David knows how to dance," Lily exclaimed, bouncing with joy. "He said he learned when he was little." Emily looked at David with renewed surprise. Dance? My grandmother was from the countryside, he explained with a nostalgic smile. She made sure I knew how to dance. She said it was a family tradition. There was something about the way he spoke of his grandmother that sounded genuine, different from the evasion she had grown accustomed to hearing from him. The fair is at school next Saturday, Lily continued, looking hopefully between the two adults. Mum, do you think Uncle David could come? With us? Emily felt cornered. Lily, David must have more important things to do. Actually, I don't, David gently interrupted, and I would love to see Lily's school, if you don't mind, of course. Emily studied his face, searching for signs of insincerity, but all she saw was genuine interest in being part of Lily's life. This left her even more confused about his true intentions. Please, Mom, Lily pleaded. It'll be so much fun. All right, Emily finally conceded. But Lily, go wash your hands now. After the girl ran upstairs, Emily turned to David with a serious expression. We need to talk, she said directly. I know, he replied, running a hand through his hair. Emily, who are you really? She interrupted him. And don't come to me with more half-truths. I went to the management office, and there is no David Smith working here. David was silent for a long moment, clearly weighing his options. You're right, he finally said. I'm not exactly a maintenance employee. Then what are you? I'm a consultant. I work for the building's owners resolving specific issues. What kind of issues? Renovations, improvements, financial matters? He hesitated. It's complicated to explain. Emily crossed her arms. Try to make me understand. Emily, the truth is that I have a position of greater responsibility than I let on. But that doesn't change who I am when I'm with you and Lily. Doesn't change. Emily felt irritation rising. You've lied to me since day one. How can I trust anything you say? I understand your anger, David said, carefully approaching, but I've never lied about my feelings for both of you. Feelings? Emily repeated, her heart racing despite her anger. Emily, He stopped, looking up toward her apartment. Lily is watching us. From the window. Emily looked and saw her daughter peeking through the bedroom window, clearly worried about the tense conversation between the adults. This conversation isn't over, Emily said through clenched teeth. But I'm not going to argue in front of my daughter. The Saturday of the school fair arrived with perfect weather. Maple Elementary School had been decorated with colorful banners, and the yard was filled with booths selling traditional foods. The sweet smell of caramel popcorn, corn on the cob, and hot apple cider filled the air, mixed with the sound of the accordion that animated the performances. Emily had dressed Lily in a red and white checkered dress with pigtails adorned with ribbons. She herself wore a blue flared skirt and a white blouse, feeling slightly out of place among the other mothers, who seemed much more at ease with all the festivities. "Mum, there's Uncle David!" Lily excitedly pointed to the entrance of the school. Emily turned and barely recognized the man approaching. David was wearing an impeccably pressed checkered shirt, dark jeans and leather boots. Once again his clothes seemed too expensive, but this time Emily tried not to focus on that. "You both look beautiful," he said, handing Lily a small corn doll and a simple bouquet of daisies to Emily. "Thank you," Emily said, genuinely touched by the gesture, although she still kept her guard up. "Uncle David, you brought a square dance outfit," Lily exclaimed, admiring his checkered shirt. "Of course, I couldn't come dressed poorly to such an important event." The afternoon surprisingly passed pleasantly. David seemed completely at ease in the school environment, chatting naturally with the other parents and even helping organize some activities. Emily watched, intrigued, as he adapted so easily to different social situations. "Is he your husband?" asked Mrs. Johnson, the mother of one of Lily's classmates, as they watched David help the children with a fishing game. No, he's a friend, Emily replied, feeling strangely embarrassed by the question. What a shame, Mrs. Johnson commented. He seems like a good father, and he's clearly in love with you. In love? Emily looked at the other woman in surprise. Dear, it's obvious. He can't take his eyes off you, and the way he looks at Lily, he really seems like a proud father. Emily observed David more closely and realized Mrs. Johnson was right. There was a tenderness in his gestures with Lily that went beyond simple courtesy, and when he looked at her, there was something in his eyes that made her stomach flip. Attention, everyone, announced the school coordinator. Now it's time for our square dance. All couples, please come to the center of the yard. Lily ran to Emily. Mom, are you and Uncle David going to dance? Lily, I don't know how to dance square dance, Emily protested, but David was already approaching with a mischievous smile. Come on, Emily. I promise I won't step on your toes. Before she could protest, David had taken her hand and led her to the center of the yard. The accordion began to play, and the caller started the traditional commands. Look out for the snake, shouted the caller, and all the couples began to move. To her surprise, David really knew how to dance. He guided her confidently and gracefully, anticipating each movement and making her feel as if she knew what she was doing. When it came time for the swaying, he held her respectfully but firmly at the waist, and Emily felt as if the world had shrunk down to just the two of them. You were lying about knowing how to dance, he whispered in her ear during a pause in the music. And you were lying about a lot of things, she replied, but there was no anger in her voice this time. When the music ended, the yard erupted in applause. Lily ran to them, jumping with joy. You danced beautifully. You looked like a movie couple. Emily felt her cheeks warm, especially when she noticed several other mothers looking at them with evident approval. How about we get some hot apple cider? David suggested clearly, wanting to break the moment of tension. As they walked to the beverage booth, Emily observed how David interacted naturally with everyone around him. He greeted the other parents warmly, sincerely complimented the homemade foods of the mothers, and seemed genuinely interested in conversations about school and education. What do you do for a living, David? Asked John, the father of a student in Lily's class. Building management, David replied without hesitation, but Emily noticed the rehearsed response. Oh, that's a good field. There's always demand. True. And you? I'm a mechanic. I have a workshop near Maple Street. Emily watched the ease with which David conversed with John, without any arrogance or condescension. If he really came from a higher social class, as she suspected, he hid it very well. Mum, can I play a little longer? Lily asked, pointing to a group of children playing in a circle. Sure, but don't wander too far. As Lily ran to join the other kids, Emily and David remained in a relatively comfortable silence, observing the festivities around them. Emily, David finally said, I know you have questions, and I promise I will answer them, all of them. But not here. When then? How about tomorrow night, after Lily goes to bed? Emily hesitated. Talking to him privately felt dangerous in a way she couldn't define. Please, he gently insisted, you deserve to know the truth. All right, she finally agreed. But this time I want the whole truth, no half measures. You'll have it, he promised, and for the first time since she met him, Emily felt he was being completely sincere. The rest of the afternoon passed quickly. When it was time to leave, Lily was visibly reluctant to leave the party. Can we do this again? She asked as they walked home. Maybe next year, Emily replied. But she noticed she was looking at David when she said that. I would love to, he said, meeting her gaze. If you both want me there. There was a vulnerability in his voice that made Emily's heart tighten. For the first time, she allowed herself to consider that maybe, just maybe, his lies had an explanation that didn't involve bad intentions. We'll see, she said softly, And David smiled, as if she had just given him the most hopeful answer in the world. That night, after Lily went to sleep, Emily found herself anxious and nervous about the conversation the next day. Part of her wanted to discover who David really was. Another part feared that the truth would destroy the special connection that was growing between them. One thing was certain. After the school fair, after seeing him dance with her and interact so naturally with her daughter, Emily knew that her feelings for David had deepened dangerously, and that scared her more than any lie he might have told. Sunday night arrived heavy with expectation. Emily had spent the entire day nervous, alternating between curiosity and apprehension about the conversation she would have with David. Lily, tired from the school fair, went to bed early, leaving the house silent except for the distant sound of traffic on Maple Street. At exactly 8 o'clock, Emily heard a soft knock on the door. She took a deep breath before opening it, finding David in the hallway with a serious expression she had never seen before. "Hi," he simply said. "Hi." Emily stepped aside to let him in. "Would you like some coffee?" "Please." They sat at the small kitchen table, and Emily noticed how David seemed out of place in her modest apartment. Not in an arrogant way, but as if he were trying to make himself smaller, take up less space. "Emily," he began, turning the coffee cup in his hands, "before I tell you everything, I need you to understand that nothing I feel for you and Lily has been a lie." "Then start by telling me who you really are," Emily said, crossing her arms. Her voice came out firmer than she felt inside. David took a deep breath. "My real name is David Smith. My father was John Charles Smith, and he owns Smith Development." Emily blinked several times, trying to process the information. Smith Development, the construction company. Among other things, yes. Among other things like what? Shopping centers, commercial buildings, real estate development. David hesitated. And residential properties. Like this building. The silence that followed was deafening. Emily felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. "This building," she repeated slowly. "You're telling me that you are the owner of this building?" "Technically, my family owns it, but yes." Emily stood up abruptly, almost knocking over the chair. "You are my landlord? All this time you knew exactly how much I pay in rent, knew about my financial situation, and pretended to be an employee." "Emily, let me explain." "Explain what?" Her voice rose an octave. "That you enjoyed playing poor with me? That you found it interesting to see how the desperate tenant gets by?" "It wasn't like that at all." David stood up too, his voice heavy with urgency. "I came to the building that day to solve a real problem with the electrical system. I always come personally to check on these things because..." "Because what?" "Because my father always taught me that a good businessman knows his properties. Inside and out," he admitted. "But when I saw you struggling with those boxes, when I saw Lily..." "You felt sorry for us," Emily finished, her voice cold. "No, I felt a connection, something I'd never felt before." David ran his hands through his hair, clearly frustrated. "Emily, do you have any idea what my life is normally like? People only approach me because of the money. When you treated me like a regular employee, it was the first time in years that someone saw me just as a person. So you decided to keep lying? I decided to try to be someone you could like for who I really am, not for what I have." Emily let out a bitter laugh. "And who are you really, David? Because I don't know anymore." He fell silent for a long moment, looking out the small kitchen window. "I'm a 38-year-old man who inherited an empire I never asked to inherit," he finally said. "Who spends most of his time in meetings talking about numbers and profits, surrounded by people who agree with everything I say because they want something from me. Who goes home every night to a huge, empty apartment, eats dinner alone, and wonders if anyone besides the shareholders would miss him if he disappeared. The raw vulnerability in his voice stirred something in Emily's chest, but she fought against the urge to feel sorry for him. "Do you think I have to feel sorry for you because you're rich?" "I don't want your pity," David said, looking directly into her eyes. "I want your understanding. I want you to know that when Lily called me Uncle David, it was the first time I felt part of a family. That when you smile at me, it's the first. A time I know it's genuine." Emily felt her resolve wavering, but a new wave of anger hit her. "And Lily, did you think about how she will feel when she finds out that the Uncle David she adores is actually the rich man who could evict us if I'm late on the rent?" The question hit David like a punch. His face visibly paled. "I would never, Emily, I would never do that to you." "How can I be sure? How can I trust anything you say after months of lies?" David slowly stepped closer, as if trying to calm a wounded animal. "Because," he said softly, "if I wanted to take advantage of your situation, I would have 1,000 easier ways to do it than pretending to be an employee and carrying boxes up 12 floors. Emily hated to admit it, but he was right. If his intentions were predatory, he wouldn't have chosen such a complicated path. "Why didn't you tell the truth from the beginning?" "Because when you assumed I was an employee, for the first time in years, someone was seeing me without prejudice. You weren't impressed by my car, my clothes, my apartment. You were just talking to me. And when did you decide it was time to stop lying?" David hesitated. "When I realized I was falling in love with you." The words hung in the air. "But he always had time to play with me," Lily said, her voice heavy with sadness. "Does he not like us anymore?" The question broke Emily's heart. She knew that her own emotional complications were affecting her daughter's happiness, and it made her feel terrible as a mother. "Of course he likes us, Lily. Sometimes adults just need some time to sort things out." "What kind of things?" Emily sighed. How could she explain to an 8-year-old that she was terrified of falling in love with a man who lived in a completely different world from hers? "Complicated adult things, my love." That morning, at the clinic, Emily was particularly distracted during consultations. Dr. Smith noticed her lack of concentration and called her for a chat during lunch. "Emily, you don't seem well. Is there a problem at home?" "Not exactly at home," she replied, fiddling with the salad she had brought from home. "Dr. Smith, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course." "How did you meet your wife?" Dr. Smith smiled, his expression lines deepening. "Ah, that's an interesting story. I met Mary when I was still a resident, and she was the daughter of the owner of the hospital where I worked." Emily looked at him in surprise. "Really? Really? And at first, it was exactly what you're thinking. I thought I could never approach her because of the social difference. She wore expensive clothes, drove an imported car, went to a private university. And what happened? One day she fainted at the hospital. She had severe anemia, and I treated her in the emergency room. During the consultation, I found out she was studying education and volunteering at daycare centers in underprivileged neighborhoods. I realized I had judged a book by its cover." Emily leaned forward, intrigued. "And how did you end up together?" "She was the one who took the initiative," Dr. Smith laughed. "She showed up at the hospital 3 days later with a homemade chocolate cake to thank me for the care. She said she wanted to get to know me better, outside the hospital environment. We've been married for 25 years. And it was never difficult. The financial difference? At first, yes, I was very proud and she had a lot of money," he admitted. "But we discovered that what mattered was not where we came from, but where we wanted to go together. And Emily." "Yes?" Mary told me years later that she fell in love with me precisely because I treated her like a normal person, not like an untouchable princess. Sometimes people with money feel very lonely too. Dr. Smith's words echoed in Emily's mind for the rest of the day. When she got home that afternoon, she found a surprise waiting for her. An envelope had been slipped under her door. Inside the envelope was a handwritten letter and a medical receipt. "Emily," the letter said, "I know you asked for time to think, and I'm respecting that. But there's something you need to know, and I couldn't keep it to myself any longer. A few weeks ago, when Lily had that high fever and you took her to the emergency room, I learned through Mrs. Thompson that you were worried about the additional medical costs. I created a fictitious social fund at the clinic to cover the expenses. I know you'll be angry, but I couldn't bear the thought of you two struggling when I could help. The attached receipt shows that the payment was made by the Smith Medical Assistance Foundation, which is real and helps other families too. You don't need to feel like an exception. I don't expect this to change your opinion of me, but I needed you to know. D." Emily held the paper with trembling hands. Lily had had a high fever 3 weeks ago, and she had indeed been worried about the additional medical costs that the basic health plan didn't cover. When the clinic informed her that there was a social fund available, she had been grateful but intrigued by the coincidence. Now it all made sense. David had been taking care of them all along, in ways she hadn't even known. "Mom, what is this?" Lily appeared in the room, seeing her mother holding the papers. "It's an explanation about your medical treatment from last week," Emily said, trying to keep her voice neutral. "Did Uncle David help with this?" Lily's insight sometimes surprised her. "How do you know?" "Because he always asks how I'm feeling, and that day I was sick. I saw him talking to you in the hospital hallway." Emily vaguely remembered seeing David at the hospital, but had assumed it was a coincidence. Now she realized he had probably been there to make sure everything was being taken care of properly. "Lily, come here," Emily said, pulling her daughter to sit beside her on the sofa. "What do you think of Uncle David?" "I like him a lot," Lily replied without hesitation. "He listens to me when I talk, and he always remembers the things I tell him. And he makes you smile in a different way." "Different how?" "Like the princesses in the movies smile when they meet the prince." Emily felt her cheeks heat up. "Lily, Mom, you like him too, right?" Her daughter's direct question caught her completely off guard. Emily tried to formulate an evasive answer, but looking into Lily's brown eyes that were identical to hers, she decided to be honest. "Yes, I like him." "Then why don't you two talk more?" "Because sometimes, when adults like each other a lot, they get scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared of getting hurt. Scared that the other person doesn't like them that much. Scared that things won't work." "Out," Lily thought for a moment. "But Mom, you always tell me that we can't let fear stop us from trying good things." The wisdom of childhood hit Emily like a revelation. How many times had she given exactly this advice to Lily? How many times had she encouraged her daughter to be brave when she was afraid of something new? "You're right," Emily admitted. "Maybe I forgot my own advice." "Are you going to talk to him?" "Yes, I'm going to talk to him." "Today?" Emily laughed, despite the emotional turmoil. "Maybe not today, but soon." That night, after Lily went to bed, Emily sat at the kitchen table with her accounting books, but instead of studying, she found herself staring at David's letter, rereading every word. There was something about the way he had cared for her and Lily, discreetly, without expecting recognition or gratitude, that touched her deeply. It wasn't the gesture of someone trying to impress or buy affection. It was the gesture of someone who genuinely cared. Her phone vibrated with a text message. It was from a number she didn't recognize. "Emily, it's Danielle, David's ex. Can we talk? It's important." Emily looked at the screen, feeling a mix of curiosity and apprehension. What could David's ex-fiancée want with her? She replied, "About what?" The response came quickly. "About David. There are things you should know before getting more involved with him." Emily hesitated. Part of her didn't want to get involved in ex-girlfriend drama. But another part, the part still struggling to understand who David really was, felt she should hear what Danielle had to say. "Where and when?" she typed. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m. at the coffee shop on the corner of Maple Street and Cardinal Avenue. I'll be wearing a red blouse." Emily looked out the window toward the street, where she could see the light on in David's apartment on the upper floor of the building across. He had said he would always tell her the truth from that moment on. But what if there were truths he still hadn't revealed? She decided she would meet Danielle, not because she didn't trust David, but because she needed to be sure that if she decided to give that relationship a chance, she was doing it with all the available information. After all, it wasn't just her heart at stake, it was also Lily's heart, who had already become so attached to Uncle David. Emily fell asleep that night, thinking about the conversation the next day, unaware that she would discover information that would further complicate her feelings about David Smith. Around midnight, a solitary figure walked through the building's courtyard, looking up at the dark windows of the 12th floor. David stood there for several minutes, hands in his pockets, fighting the urge to go up and knock on Emily's door. He had promised to give her time, and he would keep that promise, even if every day away from her felt like an eternity. What he didn't know was that in the apartment above, Emily was also awake, looking out the window and wondering if she was making a mistake by trying to protect her heart. And in a few hours, a conversation with Danielle would change everything again. The Blend coffee shop at the corner of Maple Street and Cardinal Avenue was bustling that Friday afternoon. Emily arrived a few minutes before 2 o'clock, nervous and questioning if she was doing the right thing. She chose a table near the window and ordered an espresso, trying to calm her nerves. Danielle arrived, promptly at 2 o'clock. Emily recognized her immediately. A stylish woman in her mid-30s, perfectly styled blonde hair, wearing a red silk blouse that probably cost more than Emily's monthly salary. Her shoes were clearly imported, and her handbag had the discreet logo of a French brand. "Emily?" Danielle approached with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, thank you for coming." Danielle sat down gracefully and waved to the waiter. "A decaf cappuccino with almond milk, please." Emily watched the woman in front of her, trying not to feel intimidated by her obvious elegance. There was something in Danielle's posture that suggested someone used to getting what she wanted. "So," Danielle began, stirring the sugar in her cappuccino with precise movements, "you are David's new interest." "I don't know if that's how I would define it," Emily replied cautiously. "Oh, but that's how he defines it. You have no idea how much you're being talked about in his social circles." Emily felt a chill in her stomach. "Talked about how?" "Well, let's be direct here." Danielle leaned forward, her voice taking on a confidential tone. "David has a pattern. He likes charity projects." Charity projects? Women in vulnerable situations. Single mothers, usually. He feels, how can I put this, like a knight saving damsels in distress. Emily felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. "And why are you telling me this?" "Because you seem like a smart woman, and you don't deserve to be just another one of his projects." Danielle opened her handbag and took out her phone. "Look, I'm not doing this out of malice. I'm doing it because I've been through this." "Been through what exactly?" "David and I dated for 2 years. At first he was perfect, attentive, generous, always showing up when I needed something. But then I started to notice a pattern." Danielle fiddled with her phone and showed Emily a photo. It was David at a fancy party, smiling next to a dark-haired woman who clearly wasn't Danielle. "Who is this woman?" Emily asked. "Sarah. Single mother, 2 kids, worked as a nurse. David helped her for almost a year. He paid for her children's education, got her a better job, even bought an apartment for the family." Emily felt her heart race. And then? Then he got tired. When she started talking about marriage, about a future together, he lost interest. He said she was becoming too dependent on him. And what happened to her? David isn't cruel, Emily. He didn't take back the things he had given. But she ended the relationship claiming that they wanted different things in life. Emily picked up her cup with slightly trembling hands. "And why are you telling me this?" "Because I saw the way he looks at you and your daughter. It's exactly the same look he had when he met Sarah, and Caroline before her, and Patricia before Caroline. There were others. Emily, David is a good man, but he has a fantasy. He sees himself as the hero who saves women and children in need. The problem is that when the woman no longer needs saving, when she becomes strong and independent, he loses interest." Emily felt nausea rising in her stomach. "Why are you telling me this if you broke up months ago?" Danielle sighed, and for the first time, she seemed genuinely vulnerable. "Because I really loved David, and despite everything, I still care about him, and because I see that he's getting involved with you in a different way." "Different how?" "He never talked about the other women with me, but you. He can't stop talking about you, and your daughter, as if you were—" Danielle hesitated. "As if you were his family." Emily leaned back in her chair, trying to process everything she was hearing. "Danielle, why did you and David really break up?" "Because I got tired of competing with his charity projects." There was bitterness in Danielle's voice now. There was always some woman or family that needed his attention. There was always some cause that was more important than our relationship. And do you think I'm just another cause? I think you could be more than that. But Emily, you need to understand, David has enough money to solve any practical problem you have. The question is, what do you have to offer him when all your problems are solved? The question hit Emily like an arrow. It was exactly the fear she had been trying not to face. "Can I ask you a personal question?" Emily said. "Of course." "What did you offer him?" Danielle smiled sadly. "Social status, business connections, a fiancé who knew how to behave at investor dinners, someone from the same socio-economic level," she paused. "But not true love. At least not the kind he's feeling for you." "How do you know?" "Because in 2 years of dating, David never took me to the simple places he likes. He never introduced me to Mrs. Thompson or the staff of his buildings. He never danced square dance with me at a public school fair." Emily looked at her in surprise. "How do you know about the school fair?" "Because David can't stop talking about it. He called me a week later, completely in love, saying he had found the woman of his life." Danielle laughed without humor. "That's how I found out about you." "He said that? That I was the woman of his life?" "Among other things. He also said you were the first person who made him want to be a better man, not just a richer man." Emily felt her heart race, but she tried to maintain skepticism. "And do you believe him?" "About his feelings, yes. About being ready for a real relationship, without the savior complex. I don't know." Danielle leaned forward again. "Emily, can I give you some advice?" "Please." "If you decide to give him a chance, don't accept being saved. Be his partner, challenge him, don't let him pay for everything or solve all your problems. Because if you do, when the problems are gone, he might end up gone too. And what if I don't do that? If I maintain my independence? Then maybe you'll be the woman who finally wins his heart for real." They sat in silence for a few minutes, each absorbed in their own thoughts. "Danielle," Emily finally said, "can I ask one last thing?" "Of course. Do you still love him?" Danielle looked out the window for a long moment before answering. "Yes, I love him, but I love the version of him that I knew, not the version he became when he was with me. And Emily, the version he is with you is much closer to the man I fell in love with. Then why are you helping me? Wouldn't it be easier to try to win him back?" "Because I know him well enough to know that if you two work out, he will be much happier than he ever was with me. And if you don't work out, well, at least it won't be because I didn't warn you about the dangers." Danielle stood up, leaving enough money to cover both drinks. "Emily, David is a good man, but he carries a lot of guilt for being born with a silver spoon while others struggle to survive. Sometimes that guilt manifests in not-so-healthy ways." "What do you mean?" "He feels obligated to save everyone, and that can be suffocating for the one being saved." Danielle grabbed her bag. "But if someone can show him that relationships are partnerships, not rescue missions, that person could be very happy with him." After Danielle left, Emily sat in the coffee shop for another half-hour trying to process everything she had heard. Her mind was in turmoil, mixing Danielle's advice with her own observations about David. It was true that he always showed up when she needed help. It was true that he had quietly solved several of her problems. And it was true that sometimes she felt like a charity project. But it was also true that David seemed genuinely interested in her life, her dreams, her opinions. He listened when she spoke, remembered small details, treated Lily as if she were precious. The question was, could she distinguish between true love and the savior complex? And more importantly, was she willing to risk finding out? When Emily got home that afternoon, she found Lily doing homework at the dining table. The girl looked up, hopefully, at the door, clearly looking for David. "Mom, did you talk to Uncle David today?" "No, sweetheart, but I spoke to someone about him." "Someone nice?" Emily hesitated. How to explain to an 8-year-old that adulthood was infinitely more complicated than she imagined? "Someone who made me think about a lot of things," she finally replied. "Thinking about good or bad things? About complicated things." Lily sighed dramatically. "Adults make everything complicated. Why can't they just like each other and be happy?" Emily smiled, despite all the confusion in her mind. "Sometimes I wonder the same thing, my love." That night, after Lily fell asleep, Emily found herself drafting and deleting messages to David. She wanted to talk to him about what Danielle had said, but she didn't know how to start that conversation without sounding like she was accusing him of something. Finally, she decided to be direct. "Can we talk tomorrow? There are some things I need to understand." The response came within seconds. "Sure, any time that works for you." "Sunday morning. Lily will be at my mom's house." "Perfect. Thank you for not giving up on us, Emily." Emily stared at the message for a long time before responding. "I still don't know if I won't give up, but I need all the information before deciding." "I understand, and you will have it. All of it." As she prepared for bed, Emily wondered if David was truly ready for the total honesty she was about to demand from him, and if she was prepared for the answers she might receive. In just over 12 hours, she would find out. Sunday dawned cloudy, with that typical autumn chill that called for a coat and a strong coffee. Emily had taken Lily to spend the day at her mother's house in Springfield, making up an excuse about needing to sort some things out. The truth was, she needed this conversation with David, without interruptions, without Lily's innocent presence influencing her emotions. At 10 in the morning, David knocked on her apartment door. Emily greeted him with a serious expression that he immediately noticed. "Come in," she said, making a formal gesture that set the tone for the conversation. David entered and immediately sensed that something had changed. Emily was tense in a different way, not just nervous, but ready for a battle. "Want some coffee?" she offered, more out of politeness than hospitality. "Please." They sat at the kitchen table, but this time the atmosphere was charged with a tension different from their last conversation. "Emily, what happened?" David asked directly. "You seem ready for a war." "I talked to Danielle yesterday." David's face tightened slightly. "Oh. Oh! Is that all you have to say?" "It depends on what she told you." Emily leaned forward, crossing her arms on the table. "Tell me, about Sarah, about Carolina, about Patricia." The silence that followed was heavy. David ran a hand through his hair, a look of guilt crossing his face. "Danielle didn't waste any time, did she?" he murmured. "So it's true? You have a pattern of saving single mothers?" David was silent for a long moment, clearly struggling with the best way to respond. "Yes," he finally said. "It's true that I got involved with women who were going through tough times. Got involved how? Romantically or as charity projects?" "Emily, answer the question, David." He took a deep breath. "It started as something genuine. I really cared about them. But yes, I also felt satisfaction in being able to help." "Satisfaction in solving their problems?" "Yes." Emily felt as if she had been punched in the stomach, even though she had expected that answer. "And when the problems were solved, what happened to the feelings?" David avoided her gaze. "It was complicated." "Complicated how? Did they lose their charm? Did you lose interest when they no longer needed saving?" "It wasn't quite like that." "Then explain how it was." David stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street. "When I was a child," he began slowly, "my father always took me to the company's construction sites. He showed me the houses we were building and said, 'David, our job is to give people a home. It's to provide security, stability.' I grew up believing that my purpose in life was to take care of people. And that's bad." "It's not bad. But it became unhealthy, maybe." He turned to face her. "I felt useful when I was solving problems. I felt needed. And when there were no more problems to solve, I felt lost, like I didn't know what my role was in those people's lives." Emily studied his face, seeing genuine vulnerability, but also confirmation of her worst fears. "And with me, David? Am I just another project?" "No!" The answer came quick and emphatic. "Emily, with you, it's different." "Different how?" "Because this is exactly the conversation I imagine you had with the others when they confronted you." David returned to the table and sat down, his eyes directly on hers. "It's different because for the first time I don't want to be the savior. I want to be a partner." "Explain that." "The other women, and when I solved their problems, they were grateful, dependent, and I liked that feeling." His voice was heavy with shame. "But with you, Emily, you fight against my help. You question my intentions. You force me to be better. And that doesn't bother you? It challenges me, and I've never felt that before." Emily watched him carefully, looking for signs of manipulation but seeing only raw honesty. "David, I need to tell you something Danielle said." "What?" "That you paid for Sarah's children's education, that you bought her an apartment, that you arranged better jobs for your ex-girlfriends." David nodded slowly. "It's true. And you don't see how that is problematic?" "Now I see. Back then I thought I was being generous." "And what changed?" "You," he simply said. "You made me realize that I was buying gratitude, not earning love." Emily felt something stir in her chest, but she fought against it. "How can I be sure I'm not just another experiment? Your attempt to prove you can have a normal relationship?" "Because," David said, leaning forward. If I wanted an easy relationship, I would choose someone who doesn't challenge me in every conversation, someone who doesn't make me question every motivation I have. And what if you get tired of being challenged? Emily, do you really think I got tired of the others because they stopped needing me? Danielle said that. Danielle was partially right, but she missed a crucial part, David interrupted her. I got tired of them because when they no longer needed my help, I found there was nothing real between us. Gratitude is not a foundation for love. Emily fell silent, processing his words. And what about us? What is real between us? You make me laugh genuinely. You listen to me when I talk about my fears, not just my successes. You treat me like a man, not like a bank account. He paused. And Lily made me feel what it's like to be loved unconditionally. David, Emily, I know I've made mistakes. I know I have a terrible history, but I swear to you that I've never felt for anyone what I feel for you too. And if I agree to try, if we give this a chance, can you promise me you won't try to save me from my life? I can promise. I'll try not to do that, and if I slip, will you call me out on it? Emily almost smiled despite the seriousness of the situation. Definitely. So do we have a deal? Not yet, Emily said, standing up. I need to set some rules. What kind of rules? First, I won't pay any of my bills without consulting me, neither directly nor indirectly through mysterious social funds. Understood. Second, if we're going to have any kind of relationship, it's because we're equals, not because you pity me or because I need rescuing. I completely agree. Third, Lily is my absolute priority. If at any point you feel like you're in second place because of that, it's better to end this now. Emily, Lily's place in your life is one of the things I admire most about you. And fourth, Emily continued, her voice softening, if we do this, we do it for real. No lies, no games, no pretending to be someone we're not. David stood up and walked over to her. And you? Can you accept me as I am? A man with too much money, a complicated history, and a tendency to want to take care of the people I love. I can accept all of that, Emily said slowly, as long as you understand that I don't need to be taken care of. I need to be loved. And is there a difference? A world of difference. David extended his hand to her. So shall we try, slowly, with total honesty. Emily looked at his hand, then at his face. She saw vulnerability, hope, and something that could be true love. Yes, she said, taking his hand, let's try. Emily? Yes? Thank you for giving me a second chance. Thank you for being willing to change. They stood there for a moment, holding hands, both aware that they were embarking on something completely new and potentially wonderful. Or disastrous. One last thing, Emily said. What? Lily comes back at 5. Would you like to stay for dinner? As my official boyfriend this time? The smile that lit up David's face was answer enough. I would love to, but Emily? Yes? Can I cook? I want to start contributing practically, not just financially. Emily laughed, feeling for the first time that maybe, just maybe, they could really make this work. Can you cook? My grandmother taught me. The same one who taught me how to square dance. Then yes, you can cook, but nothing too expensive or fancy. How about simple spaghetti bolognese? Perfect. And for the first time since they met, Emily felt she was seeing David exactly as he was, not as the man he pretended to be, nor as the savior he tried to be, but as the man he could become alongside her. The months of June and July passed with surprising tranquility. Emily and David established a comfortable rhythm in their relationship, respecting the rules she had set. He began having dinner at Her apartment twice a week, always bringing simple ingredients and cooking homemade meals. Lily was radiant with the constant presence of Uncle David, who had now officially become Mommy's boyfriend. Emily watched closely for any signs that David was slipping back into his old patterns, but she was impressed with his discipline. When Lily's sneakers tore, he asked before offering a new pair. When Emily's car broke down, he suggested a cheap mechanic instead of simply paying for the repair. It was a grey August morning, with that typical winter chill that penetrated to the bones, when everything changed. Emily was at work when she received a call from Lily's school. "Mrs. Johnson, this is the school office. Lily fell ill during gym class and is in the nurse's office." Emily's blood ran cold. "Ill how?" "She fainted and has a very high fever. We've already called EMS." Emily dropped everything and rushed to the school. When she arrived, she found Lily pale and burning with fever, being examined by paramedics who spoke in medical terms she didn't fully understand. "Mom," Lily whispered when she saw Emily extending her little warm hand. "I'm here, my love. Mommy is here." "Mrs. Johnson," said the paramedic, "we need to take your daughter to the hospital immediately. The symptoms suggest possible meningitis." Emily's world collapsed. Meningitis. The word echoed in her mind like a nightmare. She followed the ambulance in her car, her hands trembling on the steering wheel, praying to all the saints she knew. At the general hospital, Emily was immediately admitted to the pediatric ICU. The doctors confirmed the suspicion: bacterial meningitis. Serious, but treatable if diagnosed in time. "The treatment will take at least 2 weeks," explained Dr. Smith, the attending pediatrician. "And it will be expensive. Your basic plan only covers part of the costs." Emily felt panic take over her. Her savings would barely cover a week of hospitalization, let alone 2. But that didn't matter. She would sell everything she had, take out loans, do whatever was necessary. During the first critical 48 hours, Emily didn't leave Lily's side. She slept in the uncomfortable chair in the room, ate only when the nurses insisted, and held her daughter's hand even when Lily was unconscious. It was on the second night that David appeared. "Emily," he said softly, appearing in the doorway with a look of deep concern. "How did you know?" she asked, not lifting her eyes from Lily. "Mrs. Thompson told me you hadn't come home. I called the school and they explained it to me." He approached slowly. "How is she?" "Better than yesterday, but still serious." Emily's voice was hoarse from exhaustion and worry. David looked at Lily, so small and pale, in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines, and Emily saw tears welling up in his eyes. "Emily, you need to eat something. You need to rest. I can't leave here. I'm not suggesting you leave, but at least let me bring you something to eat." Emily finally looked at him, seeing genuine concern and love. "I don't have money for all of this, David. I know. And I'm not going to accept your financial help. Not this time." David was silent for a long moment. "Then let me help in other ways." For the next 2 weeks, David became the support system that Emily didn't know she needed. He brought homemade meals, stayed with Lily when Emily needed to shower or handle paperwork, and slept on the waiting room couch to be available if they needed anything. What impressed Emily the most was that David completely respected her decision about finances. He didn't try to pay any bills, didn't offer money, didn't create any mysterious social fund. Instead, he offered his presence, his time, his emotional support. "Why are you doing this?" Emily asked one night when Lily had finally gone a whole day without a fever. "Because I love you both," David simply replied, "and because that's what people who love each other do. They stick together in tough times." It was at that moment that Emily realized David had truly changed. He wasn't trying to save her. With money, he was being her partner in the only way she would allow. Lily slowly but completely recovered. When she was finally discharged, Emily was exhausted, financially devastated, but deeply grateful. She had managed to care for her daughter with her own resources, preserving her independence, but she hadn't been alone in the process. "Mom," Lily said on the way home, "Uncle David is really our hero, right?" Emily looked in the rearview mirror at David, who was in the back seat next to Lily, and smiled. "Yes, my love, he is." But the real revelation came 3 days later when Emily received an unexpected call. "Mrs. Johnson, this is the financial department of the hospital. There's a problem with your bill." Emily's heart raced. "What kind of problem?" "Someone tried to make an anonymous payment for your entire debt. But since you specified that you wouldn't accept outside help, we blocked the transaction. We just wanted to confirm if you changed your mind." Emily felt a mix of irritation and tenderness. "Who tried to make the payment?" "We can't disclose that information, but it was made through the Smith Medical Assistance Foundation." That night, Emily confronted David when he came over for dinner. "You tried to pay my hospital bill," she said directly. David looked like a child caught misbehaving. "I tried, but you had left instructions for them not to accept outside payments." "And when did you do that?" "On the first day, when I found out Lily was hospitalized." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I knew you would be angry. But Emily, seeing Lily in that bed, I couldn't not try." Emily studied his face, seeing total honesty. "And when they refused the payment?" "I respected your decision. I didn't try again, didn't look for other ways to bypass the system." He stepped closer to her. "Emily, I tried because my instinct is still to want to solve everything with money. But when I couldn't, I found that there are much better ways to help someone you love." "Like what?" "Holding your hand when you were scared, making Lily laugh when she felt bad, bringing you coffee at 3 in the morning when you couldn't sleep." David took her hands. "I discovered that presence is worth much more than money." Emily felt tears welling up in her eyes. "David, Emily, I know I still have a lot to learn about healthy relationships, but these 2 weeks taught me more about true love than the last 10 years of my life." "What did they teach you?" "That being in love doesn't mean wanting to save someone. It means wanting to walk alongside that person, whatever the path." Emily moved closer to him, placing her hands on his chest. "And are you ready to walk beside me, even when the path is difficult and you can't use your money to make it easier?" "Especially then," David said, wrapping her in his arms, "because I've learned that the toughest moments are when love becomes the most real." "Mom, Uncle David!" Lily appeared in the living room, running towards them. "Can I give an idea?" "Of course, sweetheart. How about we go out for dinner today, to celebrate that I'm okay?" Emily and David looked at each other and laughed. "Where do you want to go?" Emily asked. "To McDonald's!" Lily shouted, and Emily saw David make an almost imperceptible grimace before smiling. "McDonald's sounds perfect," he said, and Marina knew he was being sincere. As they walked to the fast food restaurant, Lily between them holding hands, Emily felt that they were finally building something real, not based on money or need, but on mutual choice and true love. The storm had passed and they had come out stronger on the other side, but Emily still didn't know that the greatest test of their feelings was yet to come. December arrived with the characteristic warmth of summer in New York and a special excitement in the air. Lily was fully recovered and more excited than ever, especially because Emily and David had decided to spend New Year's Eve as a family, the 3 of them together, for the first time. Emily had managed to save enough for a small trip to the beach, something simple but special. It was supposed to be a perfect end of the year, a celebration of everything they had overcome together. But on the morning of December 30th, everything changed. Emily was packing when her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. "Hello? Emily Johnson?" This is General Hospital. Are you the emergency contact for David Smith? Emily's blood ran cold. Yes, what happened? Mr. Smith was in a serious car accident. He is in surgery now. Could you come? To the hospital? Emily felt the world spin around her. How is he? We can't provide information over the phone. Please come as quickly as possible. With trembling hands, Emily called her mother, asking her to pick up Lily from school and take care of her. She lied, saying she had an emergency at work. She didn't want to scare her until she knew exactly what was happening. The journey to the hospital was the longest of her life. Emily tried not to imagine the worst, but tears streamed down her face uncontrollably. When she finally arrived at the General Hospital, she rushed to the reception. David Smith, please. I'm on the emergency contact list. 10th floor ICU. He is still in surgery. Emily ran to the elevator, her thoughts in turmoil. On the 10th floor, she found a waiting room full of elegantly dressed people she didn't recognize. They all looked at her as she entered, clearly wondering who the woman in simple clothes with red eyes from crying was. Excuse me? Emily approached a woman in her 60s who seemed to be organizing information. I'm Emily Johnson. David is on my emergency contact list. The woman examined her from head to toe. Are you the girlfriend? Yes. I'm Mrs. Smith, David's mother. Emily felt a shock. David had mentioned that his mother lived abroad and that they weren't very close, but he had never gone into detail. How is he? Emily asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The doctors say it was serious. Traumatic brain injury, multiple fractures. He was returning from a meeting when a truck ran a red light. Mrs. Smith's voice was controlled, but Emily could see the fear in her eyes. Will he be okay? We don't know yet. The surgery has already lasted 5 hours. Emily sat in a nearby chair, trying to process the information. Around her, she heard conversations about company actions, about who would take over David's responsibilities, about financial issues. It was as if she had entered a completely different world. Emily? A familiar voice made her look up. It was Danielle, looking as elegant as ever, but with a genuinely concerned expression. Danielle? What are you doing here? The family called me. Despite everything, we're still part of the same social circle. Danielle sat down beside her. How are you? Terrified, Emily admitted. He will be okay. David is strong. How did you know I would be here? Mrs. Smith told me there was a girlfriend on the emergency list. I figured it was you. Danielle hesitated. Emily, can I give you some advice? What kind of advice? This family, they are complicated. If something happens to him, they will try to exclude you from everything. You need to be prepared. Why would they exclude me? Because you're not one of them. And in times of crisis, people like them close themselves off into very small circles. Emily looked around the room, noticing the discreet but constant glances in her direction. She began to understand what Danielle meant. At 8 o'clock in the evening, the surgeon finally appeared. Dr. Smith, a serious-looking man in his 50s, addressed the family. The surgery was successful, but David is in an induced coma. The next few days will be critical. Only immediate family can visit him in the ICU. Can I see him? Emily asked. Dr. Smith looked at Mrs. Smith, who visibly hesitated. She is not family, Mrs. Smith said coldly. Mom, a male voice intervened. It was a man Emily recognized as resembling David, probably a brother. David put her name as an emergency contact. Clearly, she is important to him. Paul, don't interfere, Mrs. Smith replied dryly. Emily felt humiliation burn on her cheeks. I understand, she said, standing up. I'll come back tomorrow. Emily, Paul called as she headed for the exit. Ignore my mum. She's scared and not thinking straight. No, she's right. I'm not family. But you are the most important person in my brother's life for the past few months. Emily looked at him in surprise. How do you know that? Because he can't stop talking about you and your daughter, especially about how you both changed his life. On the way home, Emily struggled against a flood of emotions. Fear for David's life, humiliation at how she had been treated, and a painful awareness that, despite all the months together, she was still a stranger in his world. When she arrived home, she found Lily anxiously waiting for her. "Mum, where have you been? Grandma wouldn't tell me anything." Emily knelt in front of her daughter, trying to find the right words. "Lily, Uncle David got hurt. He's in the hospital. Will he be okay?" Lily's eyes filled with tears. "We don't know yet, my love, but the doctors are taking care of him. Can I visit him?" "Not for now, sweetheart. Only family can visit." "But we are his family. He said we are his heart family." Lily's innocent words broke Emily's heart. "I know, sweetheart, but it's complicated." For the next 3 days, Emily called the hospital every 2 hours, but always received the same response. Only family can receive information. It was Paul who finally called her. "Emily, it's Paul, David's brother. Can I meet you to talk?" "Of course. How is he?" "Better. He woke up from the coma yesterday, but he is still confused. The doctors say that's normal." "And did he ask for me?" It was literally the first thing he said when he woke up. Emily felt tears of relief. "Can I see him?" "That's what I want to talk about. Can you meet me at the coffee shop across from the hospital?" An hour later, Emily was sitting across from Paul Smith, who had the same green eyes as David, but a more serious expression. "Emily, I'll be direct with you. My family is worried." "Worried about what?" "About your influence on David. They think he was neglecting his business duties to spend time with you." Emily leaned back, feeling as if she had been slapped. "And you? What do you think?" Paul smiled for the first time. "I think my family doesn't understand that David has finally found something worth living for." "What do you mean?" "Emily, my brother has been running on autopilot for the last 3 years. Work, meetings, social obligations. He was living the life they expected of him, not the life he wanted. And now he has light in his eyes. He genuinely laughs. He talks about plans for the future that don't just involve financial balances." Paul leaned forward. "You and Lily made my brother remember what it's like to be happy. So why does your family see me as a threat?" "Because change is scary, and because they don't understand that true love makes a person better, not worse." Paul handed Emily a card. "This is his room number. He is desperate to see you." "And your mother?" "Emily, can I tell you something David would never tell you?" "What?" "My mother left our family when I was 10, and David was 12. She went to live in France with her lover, a French businessman. She only returned when my father died because she found out she had been left out of the will." Emily looked at him in shock. "David never told me that." "Because he still carries guilt for her leaving. He thinks he wasn't a good enough son." Paul sighed. "Her opinion of you doesn't matter, Emily. She has no moral ground to judge relationships." "And why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to understand that the only approval that matters is David's, and he chose you." That afternoon, Emily finally got to see David. He was pale and had a bandaged head, but his eyes lit up when she entered the room. "Emily," he whispered, reaching out his hand to her. "Hi," she said, sitting beside the bed and taking his hand. "How are you feeling?" "Better now that you're here." His voice was hoarse. "Where's Lily?" "She's at school. She wanted to come, but my family wouldn't let her," David finished, an expression of irritation crossing his face. "Emily, I'm sorry about that. It's not your fault. It is. I should have prepared you better to deal with them." Emily squeezed his hand. David, I just want you to recover. Emily, I need to ask you something. What? Did this make you rethink us? Seeing how my family treated you? Emily looked into his green eyes, seeing vulnerability and fear. Did it make you rethink? It made me even more certain that you are the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. The words hung in the air between them. Emily felt her heart race. David! Emily, I know it's too soon to talk about this. I know we still have a lot to build. But nearly dying made me realize one thing. I don't want to waste another day pretending my feelings are smaller than they really are. And how big are your feelings? I love you, he said simply. I love you, and I love Lily. I want to wake up every day next to you and sleep every night knowing that you both are safe and happy. Emily felt tears streaming down her face. I love you too, even after seeing how complicated it can be to be part of my life. Especially after that, because I saw that you are willing to stand up for me, even when it means confronting your own family. David smiled, despite the obvious pain. Emily? Yes? When I get out of here, can I officially ask you to marry me? Emily laughed through her tears. You can ask right now. Emily Johnson, David said, his words solemn despite the hospital setting. Will you marry me? Do you want to build a real family with me and Lily? Yes, Emily replied without hesitation. Yes, I do. And so, in a hospital room, with the sound of medical equipment in the background and the smell of antiseptic in the air, Emily finally knew for sure that David was the man she wanted to spend the rest of her life with, not because he could save her, but because they could save each other.